right, so we'll see if this works. I'm going to try to make a little recording of this art history just real quick in case somebody misses it completely. This is art history from Jacques-Louis David to Manet. So there's three types of traditional art. There's classical, there's romantic, and there's realism. And we're going to go through some paintings and try to figure out which is which and how this all changed with modern art. So the first painting that we're going to go over is the Oath of the Hirata. You've already seen this in class. This is classical by Jacques-Louis David. And classical art has a few things in common. First of all, usually it has something to do with Greece or Rome or, kind of classical education. Famous events usually, so the Oath of the Hirata certainly lives up to that challenge. There's usually some sort of harmonious, kind of coming together in the context of the painting. And then finally, there's kind of a standard form with kind of defined lines and defined characters throughout. So like I said, the Oath of the Hirata certainly fits the bill. The second piece of classical art is another one that we've already seen in class, is Marat in his bathtub after he's been assassinated by Charlotte Corday. Again, it's kind of a classical biblical depiction, kind of like Jesus Christ in the Pieta. He's holding his list or his article, and he's decked out in a very kind of defined, harmonious sort of way. Not the way a dead body usually looks, but sort of not a romanticized, but kind of made to be more virtuous view of what Marat was. You don't see his skin disease and, his anger. You see kind of a peaceful guy in his tub just after his assassination. The next classical painting is another Jacques-Louis David. It's the Battle of the Romans and the Sabines or Sabines. And this is a very famous story about the founding of Rome. So just after the founding, about 700 years BC, the Romans were seeking, women to live in Rome to kind of start their community. So they went and they actually took some women from the Sabines, which was a neighboring community. So it's not a really good story, and it's not a really kind story, but it is a very famous story about the starting of Rome. And this shows that famous battle. It has everything that's classical, so it's a famous story. There's, harmonious kind of balance in the painting. And there's defined lines, and it's an odd painting in the sense that you see children crawling around on the ground, and this kind of epic battle, but in a very kind of I guess again kind of made to seem a lot cleaner and better than it probably was. The next classical painting, just to give a difference from Jacques-Louis David, is Proudhon. It's a classical painting, Justice and Divine Vengeance Pursuing Crime. The reason why I gave this painting is because it's a bit of a transition between classical and romantic, and I wanted to show you that not everything is so clearly defined. It is classical in the sense that it is, kind of a classical theme. Vengeance and mine, divine mercy, pursuing, injustice or whatever. And the lines are pretty well defined, so it kind of fits the bill in that regard. It is a bit more kind of up to the interpretation and a bit more romantic when we get to, romantic in some ways, but it kind of, still is grouped in the category of classical. Now we're into romantic. Romantic paintings were the second type of accepted painting. And romantic paintings have all the hallmarks of romance that we learned about with Rousseau. So usually there's nature. Usually there is oftentimes something that's kind of biblical or appeals to, truth or justice or kindness. There's emotion and expression. And then the other thing is in romantic paintings, there's often some kind of rebellion against kind of natural laws or established social norms or whatever. The Entombment of Atala is a painting about a book that was very famous at the time. Um, and the story was these kind of European lovers are, entangled in a, series of kind of unfortunate events in the New World, meaning, the Americas. And obviously, this woman has just died, and her love of her life is, hugging her as she's about to be entombed by a priest. It's Girodet, romantic, and kind of fits the bill in that regard. Okay. The next one, just to kind of give a little view of Napoleon, a little taste of him before we get into the Napoleonic era, is Napoleon visiting the pest house in Jaffa. This is, again, a romantic scene in the sense that it's natural. The pest house meaning the house of those who are diseased. Um, and Jaffa is an important city in Napoleon's conquest. It's by Gross. And again, um, it has to do with emotion and expression. And if you look at the pain and the anguish on the faces of these people suffering from disease, that's important. Um, and, Napoleon, however you want to take him, he was the law, or he was a rebellion against all the law that came before. But certainly he messed with the social norms. And then the other thing that's important about this painting is that unlike classical, the people in the painting are not painted to size, or they don't fit the normal harmony that you would find in a classical painting. So if you see the guy on his knees, if he was actually to stand up, he'd be about 9 feet tall. So it's a little bit incongruous in that sense. So that's your next romantic painting. The next one is a romantic depiction of an actual event that happened in the Mediterranean, and this is the Raft of the Medusa. This is a famous shipwreck, and many of these guys were kind of stranded on a raft out in the middle of the Mediterranean during a storm. This has everything romantic in it as well, and this is a very famous painting by Géricault. You can see the storm rising in the background, the waves crashing. You can also see the people who are stranded on this raft, and it's kind of a romanticized version of death for sure, with these people kind of half hanging off and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure if you were to actually see the Raft of the Medusa, it would not be so kind of splendid. It would have been a lot more writhing and painful and realistic than this depiction of it. The other thing is, it is a rage against, nature itself, and trying to hang on with everything going against you. So that's the Raft of the Medusa. The next one, again, I wanted to kind of mix it up a little bit. Is a Delacroix, and it's a romantic depiction of the death of Serendipolus. This, again, could be kind of considered classical in some sorts of ways, in the sense that it is the depiction of a story that was famous at the time. I guess it's romantic in the sense that, we got a guy, again, who's dying, and so there's nothing more natural or, romantic than a scene of death. We have a lot of stuff going on in the painting. I don't know why there's a horse in the corner or whatever. I don't claim to know it all, but there's definitely a lot of emotion and expression in the painting. And then there's also some rebellion against the laws of nature or laws in general. So that's the death of Serendipolus. Now we're on to a different, the third type of acceptable painting before modern art. So the old traditional realism. And realism is depicted by everyday life. It's sort of the real. So it's like the truth in the depiction. So Goya, who is a Spanish artist, is probably the most famous of the realist painters. So we're going to do a few of those. And the other thing about realism, it's just scenes that are not of stories or classical. They're just scenes of what's actually going on in the real world at that given time. So this is a posed picture of Charles the Fourth, and oftentimes people call this the grocer and his family. It's supposed to depict the royal family of Spain in a way that's not terribly flattering. And if you look closely at it, you'll see that it isn't particularly flattering. Um, and what Goya's trying to do is paint them as they really are. And I think he looks at them as greedy and pernicious and vengeful and cruel people. There's actually only one person in this painting that Goya really liked. Well, besides himself, he paints himself into the background. But the woman on the far right, she actually had bad scoliosis, and he gave her a baby so that she would look better um, for the portrait. But in general, Goya did not have a strong opinion of the royal family of Charles IV. The next painting is another Goya, and this is four girls tossing, another teenage guy up in the air like a rag doll. And so this again is realistic in the sense it depicts an everyday scene. The teenage boy is kind of depicted as a rag doll in the sense that these girls are kind of messing with him. Just like teenage girls might do now, they're kind of toying with his emotions and, flirting with him when they're not really interested or whatever. And that's kind of what Goya is trying to express. It's everyday life, right? It's just a small town, kind of whatever. But he's trying to depict, the idea that this guy doesn't really know what's going on with him, in that they are, having some fun with him, maybe not so nice. But that's what's going on in El Palais. The next one is another Goya, and this shows prisoners of a battle being tied to posts and shot by the opposing army. And nothing can be done about it. There's nothing, you couldn't get much more realistic than this. This is just kind of a pencil drawing of a battlefield assassination. If you look at this painting, it's very different than the romanticized version of the death on the raft of the Medusa. There's nothing pretty or nice about what's going on in this painting. It's everyday life, right? It's what it really goes on a battlefield. It's natural, and it's kind of like the real. It doesn't romanticize or make virtuous battle. It makes it look like it's a gruesome ordeal where when you lose, it's not so much fun. And so that's, and nothing can be done about it. And the next one is Rue Transnonain. And this is just a street in Paris. And what this shows is a family that's been killed in a apartment building by government officials who are trying to put down a riot. And so you see the father who's dead on top of his dead child, and you see the feet of the mother in the background. And again, this is similar to the previous painting in the sense that it depicts something that's awful and real and cruel and, kind of the real life in its stark and brutal sort of fashion. I gave it to you partly because it's not a Goya, but I also gave it partly because it's a really good idea of what realism is about. Okay, the next one is just a bridge, right? So the bridge in Castle of St. Angelo with cupola of St. Peter's. So this is Cordat. It's realism, and it is realism, right? So it's almost like a photograph of a scene, and it's everyday life. So it's just the sun coming up or going down on this bridge. It's natural. It shows the truth of what that scene looked like at that given time. And prior to cameras, realism was maybe a good thing in the sense that it gave people an idea of what things looked like when they weren't able to go there. The next painting